Secret friends, unite!
Hey, SFU Nation. Welcome back to Secret Friends Unite. This is episode 556 in a little adventure that we call Oops, All Thunderdome. This is where we pared it all down to a single topic. This week, it's a movie, and I am joined by returning awesome co-chair, Mr. Eric Hultgren. Eric, good evening. How are you?
I am amazing. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're going to get into a crazy one tonight. This was the week that we got the... really rapid fire sequel to 28 Years Later, which came out, I'm going to say late last summer 2025, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and obviously these two were shot back to back, which I think helps speed that whole process up. But yes,
right, absolutely.
Back, pretty quick.
Right, like Back to the Future 2 and 3 were that way, though I think they came out a year apart, but still. But yeah, we're going to get into that and have a good time. First and foremost, as always, I'd like to give a plug to the wonderful folks over at our Secret Friends Unite Patreon. This is where we publish our shows early. We also have some exclusive content for you to check out and a channel on our Secret Friends Unite Discord just for the Patreons. Your first week is free. That's 7 whole days. Half off your first month, and you stay on board for as little as $2 a month. So it's a great savings, and by not doing it, you're just losing out. I mean, you're losing entertainment. You don't want to do that. You don't want to find yourself in that spot. So pop on over, try us out. The link is in the show notes. We would love to have you check us out. And hope to see you there. All right, 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Ouch! Which, we knew it was coming because they had the Bone Temple. This was just a little more... I don't want to say fleshing out the Bone Temple. Oh, because there wasn't any. That part of it was at least a little less gruesome because, they didn't need to go back. But, they had plenty of gruesome in store for this film. But just to run it down, if you've not seen the first film, this was a sequel and the fourth film in the 28 blank later series. I don't know how people are describing it as a franchise.
I think everyone's doing it however they want to, because it's like It's the 28 years franchise, it's the 28 franchise, it's the 28 days, years, months franchise. Whatever you want, you can pick whatever you want. Right?
I get people know what you're talking about. It's not like they're in competition. As we had mentioned, this was shot back to back with the predecessor. This was actually directed by Nia DaCosta, and I'm going to talk a little bit more as we get on about what I think this was a boon for her, and showed us really how talented she was, because the previous entry of her directing that comes to mind for me was really not very impressive. And it was written by Alex Garland, who gave us the exceptional Civil War film a couple of years ago, not the one with Captain America and Iron Man, but the one that could be happening next week here in this country. I have no idea. My God, we're so close. But we try not to talk about politics here, but still. Ugh. Anyway, fourth installment in this is called the 28 Days Later film series. Fine. Okay. Wikipedia, you got it. The film stars Ralph Fiennes, returning from the previous film, Jack O'Connell, who was the head vampire guy in Sinners, which I didn't realize. He was yeah. It did not click with me. Must have been the bad teeth. Vampires always have such nice teeth. That's what threw me. Alfie Williams, Aaron Kellyman, who I absolutely love from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm one of the few people who actually enjoyed that show over on Disney Plus. But she was also in Solo, which was a Star Wars movie, which I'm also one of the few people that actually enjoys. But I know I like her. And Chai Lewis Perry. The Bone Temple was released by Sony in the United Kingdom on January 13. A double bill with his predecessor. That would have been the best way to watch this. I realized that I hadn't watched it again. And when I went to go find it, Netflix, if you're on an ad-supported tier, can't watch it. So since I didn't own it, I wasn't able to pre-watch it up, so I was kind of bummed out about that. Came out here in the U.S. On January 16 and generally received positive views from critics. A sequel is in development. So let me talk some numbers, and then I'm going to kick it back to Eric. As of this recording, we're recording on Jan 17, so this is opening weekend. It's pulling a 94% on the Rotten Tomatoes tomato meter. That would make it certified fresh, and 91% out of 500 reviews on the popcorn meter, which is the audience score. North America opening looking to be between 15 and 20 million, finally dethroning Avatar, which has had this huge run, which is, if you've listened to our previous installment about that, you know that I'm no fan of Avatar. So it's good news for me. Over a budget of 63 million. So this is definitely likely to be a profitable film, especially incorporating, box office elsewhere in the world. So Eric, let me kick it over to you. Start talking to me about your thoughts and keeping it non-spoilery. As we know, the Marquis of Queensberry rules keeps it non-spoilery at first. But take it away.
So I would say there's a couple things that I like right from the jump that are not spoilers. Thing number one is it was really exciting when we got to 28 years later that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland were back together. And what I like about this film is that Alex then moves to work with Nia DaCosta, so you get that continuity and these two things fit together. You and I are woefully aware of the Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams debacle, which is what happens when you don't have that continuity, right?
Right.
And I think the strength, there's so many strengths in this film, but one of them is Alex's writing. There are so many little nuanced things that I just thought stunned me, that I adored it. The other thing I love is when you're building a world, and I know in the 28, what did you call it? The 28 years franchise? Is that
they called it the 28 Days Later film series. That's what they called it further on.
The film strip series of zombies. We're already dealing with a small world, but they are world building. And inside that world, what I think is the strength of this film, and one of the things that I know you're going to get to Marvel at some point tonight, but one of the things that Marvel doesn't do very well is go down and tiny. And the fact that this takes in and around the Bone Temple, and although it has two stories that careen together and none of that is spoilers, the fact that it's such a tight story, I found that by that third act, I was at Celebration, and I only say that because I've got the reclining chairs. By the time I'm at the third act, the chair is not reclined. I am on the edge like it's a monster truck show, and I'm like, I cannot wait to see how this thing wraps up, because the whole time it's just this like slow boil, and we'll talk about it in spoilers, but there's these things happening with these characters that are so rife with tension, and they just get tighter and tighter and tighter over the course of the film. So by the end, when it boils over, you're like, oh my, I had no idea how you were going to do that. And I'm a little uncomfortable now about how we're doing that. So I can't say enough things about this film that I like. And I'll say one more thing that's not really spoilerly, I don't think. The other thing that stood out to me is a nod back to Stranger Things. If you go and look at the Montauk deck when they were launching the original Stranger Things, there's a line in like the third or fourth slide where the Duffer Brothers talk about the music of the show and that the music should always have a source. The score can be ethereal, but if you're listening to a song, it has to have a source, a Walkman, a radio, a car. It has to have a source. And 28 years later, the Bone Temple does that with Dr. Ian's record collection. And I thought it was such a great nod that every time a popular song that isn't a score shows up, it's got a source until the end of the film, which we'll talk about later.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I was blown away too. In the beginning, I didn't know where this was going for a good chunk of kind of that first act. I was like, what are they doing? I mean, particularly when you have the first encounter with the infected and a random dude wandering through the woods. I was like, is this what this is going to be? Is it going to be just this kind of, because it's like, that's what certainly they've done in the first three films. And I just don't know, necessarily how different that is, and where will there be additional value in it? But this got to not even the midway point, and you really saw it ramp out in a direction, like you said. You had Unit A, which is kind of A story, B story, we call it, when we're breaking down TV episodes on our other shows. You had your A story, which was set up by the finale of the previous film, which was Spike, our young man, meeting this gang of individuals that kind of help him out of a jam, and you don't know where that's going to go. And that is where the film gets rolling, and then we're kind of back with other characters, including Ray Fiennes' character, the doctor, and then the aforementioned individual in the woods. But we'll get into all of that. But this took some big swings, which ultimately, particularly in that third act, gave us a real gripping. Didn't really know which direction it was going to tilt in, and who was going to make it, and who wasn't. It was absolutely crazy. What is your before we get into spoilers? I get the feeling where you're going to go. What is your kind of top line 1 to 10 score?
Oh, I think you and I have about the same. I was going to give it an 8.5, if not a 9. I actually think if I watch these back to back again, and I didn't, much like you, a double feature would have been great. I might actually say that this is better than 28 Years Later. I might like it a little bit more.
I think so too, and I know in particular that first film, it was like I know I have the sad habit sometimes if like we go out to the movies, it's date night, we're at Hopcat before, maybe I have a second beer instead of just the one. I get a little bit of sleep, and I know I slept through a part of the first movie, and I was like, "Babe, what happened with the Quicksilver guy from the Aaron Taylor Johnson? What happened? Didn't you remember the part where he did this and that?" I said, "No, I was absolutely sleeping. No sleeping during this movie." And I thought I was like, "I'm feeling a little drowsy getting into this one." And I was like you. I was like, "Ah," without a doubt. So, all right, let's move into spoilers territory. Again, if you're listening to this, note the time in your calendar, but give it a pause. Pop out and see that movie. Go out to your local cinema. Support local cinema, definitely. Or if this is in the future, go rent that, whatever it is. Rent it, purchase it, whatever it is. We don't advocate piracy, so that's not even in the conversation. But check it out. Pay your dues. Support the system. Then come back and pick up with us right here. So, all right. Let's dig into some favorite moments and some not so favorite moments. So, Eric, take me on a journey.
So one of my favorite things in film, and I didn't go to film school, so might not know all the terminology where in a screenplay this shows up, but is when they bring in a story from another place to build a metaphor for the movie that's going on. And in this film, it's Aesop's fable about Androcles, who is a runaway slave who escapes into a cave and discovers that there's a lion in there, but the lion has something in his paw. And so Androcles helps the lion, befriends the lion, they become friends. And later on in Aesop's fable, he ends up in the gladiatorial arena during the Circus Maximus, and he's supposed to fight a lion. And it turns out to be that lion, and that lion recognizes him, doesn't eat him, and they, that's the end of the fable, right? Like, help the monster, right. Monster turn out to help you. That scene between Dr. Ian and the Alpha and the scenes after where they are in such close proximity, I was on the edge of my seat, like waiting for the typical horror trope of this going horribly wrong.
Right.
And figuring out when you get to the end of the movie, figuring out that this is the third movie, right? So there's an interview out there with Danny Boyle where he was talking to Nia DaCosta and was asking her, what do you think this film is about? Meaning this second film. And she says, right. Well, the first movie is an exploration on family. I think this movie is an exploration on evil, and the third one we're working on is an exploration on redemption. And the fact that Samson, the Alpha, it might be the linchpin to this redemption was such a wildly refreshing way to play in this space. That has to be that scene. And then the other scene that stood out, there's a number of them, but the other one that stood out to me that was just a tiny, almost throwaway moment that led to big things is when Jimmy Crystal stabs Ian and kills him. It's such a non-explosive, simple, like it's just a flick of the wrist. He gets him in the stomach, and that's the end. And it just is such a fun exploration of what violence is actually like up against this backdrop of the infected that are literally in this movie ripping people's heads off and eating out of them. Right?
So visceral. Yeah, that was a moment that I just looked at and I was like, I mean, yeah, you get that. You get this regular guy running through the woods, and then all of a sudden the infected come out, and they're just like, blah, 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 blah. And we see Alpha, and he just grabs the guy, and he literally knocks this dude down the ground, jams his thumb in his eyeball, so he goes, and then he rips his skull off with the, like Predator with the damn spinal cord hanging down. And then later, you might as well have a knife and a fork because he's just eating his brains like it's tilapia. It was totally nuts. Yeah, I mean, that was pretty crazy to me. So yeah, crazy. And you talked a lot about the music, sourced Duran Duran. Who doesn't enjoy the hell out of listening to Duran Duran? But then we're listening to Ray Fiennes go through it, and you think about, you know what? He's a guy who probably grew up in the 80s, so this was his high school music, and it humanized a guy who also has a weird memoriam of all these huge towers packed with bones, and you thought, well, at any point he's just, he's just going to totally flip out. So it humanized him a little bit. It kind of brought the temperature down, for lack of a better term, until we get to the third act, which is totally nuts, and he gets himself all gothed out, and he puts on, damn it, I was watching a video and I wrote down the name of the Iron Maiden song, but I just called it the 666 Devil.
It's called The Number of the Beast.
The Number of the Beast. 666 Devil Dancing is what I decided to call it. I think
that's the subtitle of that song, typically.
Absolutely. I like it. And it just absolutely everything with Jimmy, who is Jack O'Connell's character, and his gang, that it's like Negan in The Walking Dead. We are Negan. But they wear these weird little wigs. There was a little thing I noticed that Spike gets absorbed into this gang, but I did notice at one point when he's standing and listening, they're all wearing the wigs, but you can see his wig is kind of shitty and there's a clip hanging out the side. Yep. I thought, I love underscoring that, but I wrote, they're merciless, but are they misunderstood? Are they misguided? Are they driven by the Teletubbies, which I thought was one of the most famous explorations when they're sitting around the dinner table of that family that they overtake, and then they run them out to the barn and string them up and start, we were watching Silence of the Lambs was a movie April wanted to watch tonight, so we were watching it before he came down here, and I thought, very Hannibal Lecter just peeling flesh off and stuff like and they call it, they're dancing around Satanism because that's the bent that we have here, but they call their wholesale serial killing charity,
right? Which I think speaks to some of Alex's brilliance here. So,
right,
Jack O'Connell's character is based off of that Jimmy Savile human.
Yes,
right.
Yes,
and so what's interesting about this is they call the when they torture people, they call it charity. Jimmy Savile, when he died and then they figure out what a monster he was. Right. One of the ways is that he got a hold of these children was through his charitable contributions. That's how he got access to them. So I think this is like some of that brilliance in the writing. And the Teletubby things, I sort of took, because at the end of the movie, when he screams for his mom, I think that's a great loop back to that he's probably never aged past the 8 years old in the church. Like he's locked in this Teletubby time warp thing, and he's never really aged, and because it's 2002, he thinks that Jimmy Savile is still this upstanding individual and someone he should admire. Even his how's that catchphrase is a riff on Jimmy Savile's catchphrase. Like the fact that they embody this whole thing, and he's a man-child in this Satanist cult, is just awesome. And the fact that because as well as I do, it's got a lot of Clockwork Oranginess with this group, right?
Right.
And there's an opportunity there to not have a deft hand, right? Like to add too much cilantro to the salsa here and make it too crazy, right? But Nia and Alex are able to kind of keep this deft hand where they're wacky, but they're absolutely terrifying for the entire film. And that moment in the barn where the guy in the hanging picks the Jimmy that he thought was the weakest and turns out to be the strongest, like that terror just speaks to how insane that group is and what great casting and writing that entire core group got.
Right. Yeah, and the barn is one of the ones that just from start to finish, you're seeing these poor people they've hung up, they're being cut. Then when they cut back to it, you see the pierce been kind of skimmed, but they have the one guy who's untouched, and they kicked it off kind of where we saw Spike at the beginning. Is to get initiated into the gang, you get to fight to the death with one person, and they offer that choice. He says, well, if you accept, if you refuse, you die. You die if you lose in the fight, you die. And so, they put him up against, basically the Tinky Winky of the group, or she says something to that effect.
Her name is Jimma, right? That she's the only one.
Yeah, Jimina, and
Jimina,
Jimmy.
There you go.
Jimmy Inc. was Aaron Kellyman's character, who is the only one who survives in the end, and we do see the moment which I'll touch on in the end here, where they run off. She and Spike are running off, and blah blah blah. We'll get there, but she's stabbing him, and then she's stepping up above him, and then the only survivor from the farm is this pregnant woman who is hiding in the rafters the entire time, and she takes the opportunity to do the horror film classic of the big dangling hook that she just, and you don't even hear it or see it. You just Jamina is standing over there ready to deliver her death blow, and she's doing that cliche that they should never do when you're making a speech, and then all of a sudden the hook is just jammed through the back of her skull, and you spend a good 30 seconds of her kind of babbling, and then blood starts coming out her nose, but it's just right in the top of her scalp. But then our survivor, who you thought, all right, this guy's going to make it, even though he's been stabbed like 5 times in really important places, he stumbles away and grabs a propane tank that he opens slightly, that he catches an open flame and lights a guy on fire. It goes completely insane. Everybody's on fire. They lose a bunch of people. Wow. So at this point in the movie, I'm like, where the hell are they going to go from here? It was just completely nuts.
And I think that's the end of that scene is one of the other things that works really well is where the humor comes in, because outside is Jimmy Inc. and Spike, and she's like, man, that's sure a lot of screaming. But I guess there's always screaming when there's Charity, and then there's like that giant when there's that giant pregnant pause. And she's like, that doesn't sound like the type of screaming that we get with Charity. And I'm like, that writing is it's just such a funny moment where they're both standing out there, very like Tarantino-esque, where it's like this ultra violence happening, and then there's jokes happening in another part of the same scene.
You're right. Yeah, like the Hawthorne Diner in Pulp Fiction, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
All right. I'll tilt a little bit into the direction of kind of missed opportunities and weird stuff that I wasn't crazy about. Now, I was watching a video, and I watched a Screen Crush, who is Ryan Airy, who is a collaborator. Yeah, he's a collaborator of ours. He's actually going to be doing some stuff with us down the road here, because he and I have been talking, which I'm very excited about. He had mentioned, and I'm sure you picked up on this too, the infected are not actually zombies. They are alive with an infection, which, as we learned through Alpha, can be mitigated with medication, antipsychotics, so on and so forth, to the point that it can actually be cleared up in a sense. So my question is, if these people are not dead, like in The Walking Dead, the zombies can do anything. If you don't take out the brain, they can be, I'm missing an arm, I've got a broken leg. We do see a broken leg infected dragging their leg through the forest. How do they not succumb to these mortal wounds and they're still alive? So that's a suspension of disbelief kind of thing that is kind of missing to me, because Samson, he's covered in scars. He gets a big bite on his neck. He's missing a chunk out of his scalp. It's like, how are they still able to recover from that and be alive, quote unquote, technically? I guess that was kind of missing for me. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think it's a valid question. I always think to myself, okay, when you're doing a story like this, or you're doing sci-fi, or you're doing anything that has some sort of fantasy element to it, there is that bridge too far. That one extra disbelief that you've added in, that they're out, right? And until you said that, I don't know that I paid much attention to it, because I feel like they wrote so aggressively against it in the train scene. I know you haven't gotten there yet, but in the train scene, when Samson is healed, he's getting mauled and still like Royal Rumbles an entire train of infected. and then is still fine. And so I don't know, maybe he's a 1 in a million because he's the alpha. I don't know. I mean, it's not a question that I think is just insane or crazy. I think it's a valid question. But for me, I was just, because of that train scene, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm supposed to believe that he is infected Captain America and he can just take all of this and he will be fine. Right. But that might not be true for the broken leg infected that we saw and never see again. Right.
Or you just think, eventually she'd keel over. Right.
Well, you go back to 28 years later when they find the overweight one. I don't remember the name they have for the blob ones that.
Okay.
And that one can't move and eventually just either goes dormant or dies. And so I don't know. There's an architecture there that we haven't seen. And will they pay it off? I don't know.
Right. My other big misgivings, and this is something small, ironically, I don't think we need to see this much dick. It was absolutely everywhere. I mean, you got Ralph Fiennes, and the carpet matches the drapes because there was a scene he was undressing in his little bunker, and he was just. I guess we didn't need it. Now, when Samson starts to become more humanized, he picks up that Tarzan loincloth.
Yep.
But it's interesting, and this is kind of a look at the character. When he finally does his I Love You Set the Royal Rumble on the train, and he comes out, and it's night, and there's a lightning storm. He's naked, and he's just flopping out, and he's covered in blood, and he's like, brah! That's just an expression of him. He returning to... maybe even kind of like a, smart Hulk. It's the balance of Bruce Banner and the Hulk. You know what I mean? He's got the power, but he's retained his humanity, but his dick is still out. So where do you draw the line? I don't know. Cillian Murphy is back from as Jim, who is our original character from this as an independent film in 2000, and I'm going to say 2 or 4, the first time the first one came out.
Yeah, something like that.
Very early aughts. But he's back, and he's at appropriate age. He's got a young daughter. He's a school teacher in this rural community he lives in, and he's running his daughter through lessons. When they hear a cacophony in the distance and they run off, he's got a gun, she's got the spyglass, and they look, and it is after the final scene, it's Jimmy Inc., so Aaron Kellyman and Spike. They're now running from some infected, and we get a real what they call start your engines movie, where they're teeing you up for the sequel, even though, I mean, this is a sequel, and we really have people in the know really know there's a sequel coming. That there's, they end it right at, well, should we go help him? Well, I guess we got to go help him. And then it ends. So, I generally kind of hate that, but in this, I don't so much. It's kind of a non-objection. I don't know. Anything in this that you're just like, bleh.
Well, I mean, I was very excited to actually see him back because, I you'd heard rumors. I didn't watch any trailers before we got to this because I was, a lot of trailers tend to, especially in horror, tend to ruin the entire film. So I kind of ignored all the spoilers because I just sort of wanted to go into it. But what I hear you, and I am typically of the same school where okay, especially if you watch enough Marvel films and they don't actually start your engines. They talk about engines and then they just forget that they did that thing and go do something else.
They give you a stinger that drives right over a cliff. It's like, oh, we're setting you up for it. It's like the Harry Styles at the end of The Eternals, which was a shitty film anyway. But it's like, we're setting you up for a setup you'll never ever see because this film was a huge failure.
Correct.
That kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in this case, what I enjoyed about it was not only that one of my favorite characters in this universe is back and it makes sense and all of the things, but that it immediately brought the craziness that we just experienced for 2 hours back down to the ground. Like, okay, we've landed back in normal town. This is what you've expected. There's infected running all over the place. There are people in trouble and people who can help them out of trouble. And that is where we're going to start the final phase of this trilogy that's 5 movies, so I don't really know how to label it. So
yeah, it's a 2+3 film series. Right. 2 and 3. Yeah, I was talking about Nia DaCosta. I was psyched to see what a talented director she is. I'm not familiar with any of your other works except for, and it was funny, I was watching Ryan talk about this in a video in Screen Crush earlier today, that she essentially drew the short straw and directed one of the MCU's most colossal and notorious flops, certainly in the most recent years, which was The Marvels, which absolutely tanked. But I'm glad to see she's super talented because this was definitely done together. It was very obviously tightly associated with the spirit of what the writer and the heritage, person lying out, the blah, blah, blah. Our guys Garland and what was the other guy's name?
Danny Boyle.
What they put together. So, and just told a beautiful story that for me, we did not anticipate. We thought, this would be another gore fest or blah, blah, blah. And it'll be a bunch of, infected running around. The percentage of the infected in this is actually pretty damn small. Yeah, it's one of the smaller parts of the film. So yeah, I was really, really blown away by that. I'm going to run through a couple of. I don't have too many fun facts because we've said a lot of this stuff. But one fun fact I had: the Bone Temple set was constructed from around 5,500 skulls and 150,000 bones, each of which was individually cast and attached to 1,000 upright columns. I was trying to figure out, in world, did he build those around trees or something? Because it's almost like a Stonehenge kind of thing. It's just kind of incomprehensible. You know what I mean? So yeah, final thoughts. I mean, other things that really blew you away. Thoughts you have about the next one?
I mean, I think they leave us in a place where I'm very excited. I was one of the same people, and there was a couple of people on Reddit talking about this, where as soon as that scene happens, they wanted to walk into another theater and watch the next, right? Like that's how excited they were about whatever we're doing next. And I just think these two films together create such a dynamic setup for this third film that I'm super excited, because you have all these characters out there that were in the first film that didn't show up in this one that we can catch up with, and plus whatever we're going to move on to, I think is fascinating. And you've got the fact that you can expand the aperture to the third film, that we can Scotland, England, Ireland, all of that can kind of be in play in that film.
Right. Yeah. Awesome stuff. So this is cool. So yeah, if you're listening to the sound of our voice, please go out and support this film. It is a wild ride. It's a great story, and I think you will enjoy it very much. It gets the SFU stamp of approval. So Eric, awesome to have you back. We'll talk off camera about kind of what our next project is about, but we always have a good time talking about movies. Where do people find you on the socials?
You can find me anywhere that you do things socially, at Eric Hultgren or the incredible Hult. Either of those things, you'll be able to find me.
Totally awesome. And as for me, for both Secret Friends Unite and myself, I run all of those social handles. Personally, I am at the C3, THECEETHREE, on all of them. And again, with the Secret Friends Unite handle, I'm working on growing that. It didn't have a lot of growth in the last few years, but I did start a TikTok where I do little kitchen chats, or I do chats down here in my studio where I just talk about little quick bites about stuff that I'm enjoying. But yeah, always secretfriendsunite@gmail.com. Drop us a line there. Let us know something you're enjoying. And if we're talking about it on one of our shows, we will talk about it there. So great having you. Friends, as always, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trucking.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.